Hello everyone, thank you for joining me. Today's tutorial is for the Courtney Clutch. Today I will be using cork leather and waterproof canvas for my fabrics. For this particular pattern you will need to use a non-fray material for your exterior pieces, but you can use woven material for your interior. So I've already got my pieces cut out, but we'll kind of go through what we have. We have our main body piece and our zipper overlay, which is template A and template C. You'll notice on the main body, I actually used my laser to cut out everything. So I have my grommet holes cut and my zipper box cut. Then for your lining, which is template B, you'll notice I have not cut my grommet holes out. You can go ahead and cut them out when you cut your lining. I like to wait until I have the lining in place on my exterior, just so I don't have to worry about things matching. I use template B1 on this because I'm using waterproof canvas. If you're using a woven fabric like cotton or linen, you're going to want to use template B2. That's all explained within the pattern. I also have my card pocket and my card pocket binding pieces, and then my strap, which is also cork leather. You're also going to need a zipper with zipper pull and your 1-inch oblong grommet. This is the screw together kind. I recommend these as opposed to the prong. I get my oblong grommets from Emmeline bags. Okay, I think that's everything. Oh, if you're using cotton fabric or woven fabric for your interior pieces, you'll want to probably put an interfacing, just a thinner woven interfacing, just for a little more stability on your lining and your card pocket, depending on how thick your material is. If you're using canvas, don't worry about it. If you're using like quilting cotton, you'll probably want to interface it. Just go ahead and use your template piece to cut another lining and interfacing, and then the dimensions for the card pocket. All right, let's get sewing. Okay, so if you're going to be using cotton fabric or woven fabric for your interior lining, you're going to be using template B2 to cut it out. And for the zipper box, which is really the biggest difference, you're not going to cut out a box. You're only going to actually cut on these solid lines here, which I have already done actually on this one. Okay, so what I do is I just, trace around it, then get my pen, which I don't have beside me, and just draw the line down. Okay. Then I usually get my rotary cutter and with a ruler slice up the middle, and then use my sewing scissors to cut the triangle parts. So I also on this one drew a box around. This will actually be the zipper, what the zipper box shape will be. You don't have to do that. I did that just so you could see what I was doing and where I was in the pattern. So because this is a woven fabric, we don't want to have any raw edges along the zipper box. So this is why we're making the zipper box this way. So once you have your solid lines cut, what you're going to want to do is you're going to fold back your triangles. Okay. And then you're going to fold back your long pieces, and you're really, the reason I drew this was so you can see you're going to fold it right along that line there. Okay. And you're going to iron it, press it down. And of course, the pen I was using was a friction pen, so it erased with the heat, but that's okay. So you're going to do that on both sides. And your zipper box opening should be kind of the standard 1/2 inch width there. I'm going to flip that over and iron it from the other side as well. Make sure my opening is fairly even. Sometimes when you fold fabric over, you get a little more. Okay, so there you go. So now when you put this into your onto your exterior, you aren't going to have any raw edges around your zipper box. For our first section of the pattern, you're going to need the main body piece and your zipper overlay piece, and some double-sided tape. So go ahead and turn your zipper overlay to the wrong side, and we're going to get some double-sided tape. And I like to put my double-sided tape right against the zipper box here to help hold it in place when we lay it onto the main body piece. You might be able to get some sewing clips on there to help hold it in place. I've found that double-sided tape helps keep everything in place. If you're worried about this slipping, or if your double-sided tape is not sometimes as sticky as you want it to be, like mine, sometimes I get a bad batch, you can also put another piece here and here, so you can put a total of 4 pieces on. This tape is actually pretty sticky for my double-sided tape, so I'm just going to put my 2 pieces here and here. So let's remove the backing here. It really doesn't matter up or down, and we're going to line up our zipper box of our zipper overlay with the zipper box on the main body piece. So you want to make sure that you don't get any of this like showing, any of the main body showing, so you know, move everything around. Sometimes the zipper box skews just a little bit, so make sure you stick everything down really well. Go to the other side and do the same thing. Get that stuck down nice and tight. Now, if you want, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be sewing around the outside of the zipper box. If you want to get some sewing clips and put them along here, this can help kind of keep things in line, and you get some more clips. But your double-sided tape should hold it fairly well. The part that moves the most, though, I will say, are these corners as you sew down. Sometimes it pushes the fabric just a little bit. So if you're going to clip anything, you can clip those corners. All right, let's move over to the sewing machine. Okay, so what we're going to be doing is sewing around the outer edge of the zipper overlay at about 1/8 of an inch away from the edge. You want to start this stitching without back stitching. And then stop it without back stitching. We're going to pull our threads to the back side. That'll keep a nice neat stitch line around the overlay. I'm using a contrasting thread here so you can kind of see my stitches a little bit better. As you get to these rounded corners, if you are more skilled than I am, you can go nice and quick. I have to hand crank around rounded corners, especially when I'm videotaping it, because I am sitting further back away from my machine, so I can't see as well where my foot is. And we're going to come right up to where we started and stop without backstitching. Right. Now we're going to take our threads, which you can't see very well because it's the same color as my backing, and we're going to pull them all to the back side here. And if you have a little stiletto, which I don't have sitting here, of course, you can use that to help get those threads out and pull it to the side. All right. So what you want to do, you just want to tie knots off, cut them. If you want to leave them a little longer, this stitching is going to be hidden underneath your lining. If you want to cut them short and burn the edges so the knots stay a little more secure, or use a little bit of fray checker glue on there to help. And then we'll move on to our next step. Okay, so we have our exterior sewn together. So we're done with this for the moment. We're going to set this piece to the side. Next up is our interior assembly, and we're going to start with our card pocket. At the beginning, in step 1, you're going to see a nice diagram that shows you where to mark your card pocket folds. You're going to start on the left side, make your first mark, and then you're going to measure from that mark for your second, and then your third. So the first one is from the edge. Each measurement after that will be from your previous mark. I've already marked all these. It's kind of hard to see, but they're there. I also like to put a small little snip in the edge because it's easier for me once I start going if I see the snips. Okay. So you're going to start at your starting edge, and you're going to fold wrong sides together at this first mark. Now, if you're using a cotton, you can get your iron and do a nice press. I am using a waterproof canvas, so ironing doesn't work so well. So I'm going to use my hair marker here and just kind of crease that edge. Okay, so that was wrong sides together. You're going to go to your second mark, fold up with right sides together. Try to get everything nice and even on your edges now, because that makes it much easier later. And then you're going to just keep folding back and forth, wrong side to right side at each mark, and pressing or creasing those folds as you go. the last fold you make will be wrong sides together. And that will be the top of your bottom card pocket. You will have a total of 7 folds, which will make 3 pockets. 1, 2, 3. If you're using cotton, go ahead and give everything a really good press. And we are going to move on, and we are going to be top stitching the tops of our card pockets. So we're not going to top stitch this first fold here, but we're going to top stitch the second, third, and fourth of these top folds. So let's move over to the machine. We're going to be top stitching across our pockets now. We're going to be top stitching across this second, third, and fourth fold. You don't want to top stitch the top. We'll be stitching that later, so we don't want to have 2 lines of stitches there, but that will be stitched to kind of help it flatten if you're using waterproof canvas. But we're going to be doing that at a later step. So that's why I'm leaving it out right now. So make sure you flip what you're not stitching out of the way. And you're just going to crow across the top of these pockets about 1/8 of an inch from the folded line. I don't backstitch these because they're going to get stitched in to another seam. But if you would like to backstitch for a little extra security, you may. Whoops, sorry about that. I have this zoomed in nice and tight so you can see my sewing foot, but that kind of keeps the rest of it off screen. So yeah, make sure you've folded your other stuff out of the way so you're not accidentally stitching something together that you don't want stitched together, because I can tell you from experience that is never a fun thing to have to undo. I'm sorry, I keep bumping my camera as I'm sewing this, so you're a little jostled. Again. Apparently that is my path my hand goes in. Okay, so let's get everything back together here and zoom out just a little bit. So we stitched across the second, the third, and the fourth top pockets. Now we're going to move over to do a little bit of trimming. Okay, so we've moved over to the cutting mat now, and our next step is to trim our pocket to 4 inches. So I'm actually going to real quick kind of clip my pocket down just a little bit since I can't press it, just to kind of help hold things in place. Make sure my edges are all lined up and we're not having a crooked pocket over here. Oop. There we go. All right, so what we're going to do is we want to cut this front piece here to 4 inches. That should be longer than our back. Okay. So I'm going to use my line here because I have those clips on that side. Double check everything, make sure you're where you need to be, and you're going to cut off that bottom part. So now you see your back of your pocket is going to be about 1/2 inch longer than the front. I'm sorry, the back of the pocket is going to be a 1/2 inch shorter than the front part of your pocket. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to fold this piece up. And it's going to fold up about 1/2 inch, but you're going to just fold it right at the line, that bottom edge of the back of your pocket. So we're looking at the back of the card pocket at this point, and we're going to fold the front over the back. Now, if you're using waterproof canvas like I am and you can't press that well, I get some of my trusty double-sided tape and I stick it down here at the bottom, and I use that to help hold the fold in place. I'll also put a couple clips down there to help keep it where I want it. All right, so this will give a nice clean edge to the bottom of our card pocket. Okay, our next step is to, of course, I don't have the pieces over here, hold on. Get your card pocket binding pieces. Okay, so let me find my front and my back. Okay. So what I want you to do is I want you to turn it to the wrong side, and you're going to fold over about 1/2 inch of your binding wrong sides together. If you have woven fabric and you want to give that a good press, go for it. If not, crease it really well. You're going to go to one side of your card pocket and you're going to put that folded edge right along the top of your card pocket, and you're going to line up your left edges here and clip it in place. The bottom edge you're going to fold up, and it's going to be about 1/2 inch. And you're going to fold it even with the bottom edge of the card pocket. Now, in my pattern, I tell you to fold each edge 1/2 inch, which is what you're going to need. It's going to be about 1/2 inch on each side. But because of the way things, sometimes measurements are off a little bit, you might have to adjust one of your folds once you clip it in place. So that's why I'm just doing this fold here at the end. Okay. Now, we're going to sew a scant 1/4 of an inch away from this edge. That just means just slightly less than 1/4 of an inch. The reason I do slightly less than 1/4 of an inch is once you've folded and tucked and seamed everything, is going to make that seam just slightly thicker. So I just go slightly less. That way it's more of a true 1/4 inch once everything is folded and tucked the way it is. Because I'm moving from one section to the other, I'm going to go ahead and do my second binding piece the same way. In the instructions, I have you do one side, then the other. But for convenience sake of me moving my camera back and forth, I'm going to go ahead and put the second piece on now, so I move around a little less and have to move my camera back and forth a little less for you guys and for me, because you know it really doesn't hurt you any for me moving my camera. So we'll get that all clipped in place, and we're going to go back over to the sewing machine and we're going to sew down a scant 1/4 of an inch down each side of the card pocket binding. Okay, so we are now at step 10 of our interior assembly. If you want a little update on where we are in the actual pattern, we're sewing the card pocket binding to the card pocket. You want to make sure that all your folds and this fold back here, when we tucked the card pocket edge under, stay tucked so that you know, are where you're supposed to be. And we're just going to sew a scant 1/4 inch from the edge. At this one, you do want to backstitch at the beginning and the end. And you also, as you get up to this folded edge, your second folded edge of your card pocket binding, if anything shifted or moved, just, you know, make sure that that folded edge is lined up with the folded edge of the card pocket and nothing's overhanging. I don't know why my needle's having trouble there. There we go. Okay, and we're going to do the same thing now on the other side. So make sure. Now we have our card pocket with the bindings sewn on to each side. What we're going to do is we're going to fold our binding at that seam. If you're using woven material, go give it a good press. If you're using waterproof canvas, press that edge down. Now we're going to turn it over to the wrong side. And we're going to fold. Let me zoom in just a little because this is going to be a little more up close here. We're going to fold this edge and we're going to fold it right to the seam that we put in. Okay, so we don't want to fold it all the way here. We just want to fold it here to that stitch line. The reason for this is because when we add this to the interior lining, we will be able to stitch right along this part here, and you're only going to be going through 2 layers of fabric as opposed to having to go through all of these layers here with your folded pocket. So you just want to fold it to the stitch line. That way when we put it on our lining, it's a lot thinner of material that you're going to be stitching through. Again, if you're using woven fabric, you can go give that a good press and put some clips on it. I am going to get my double-sided tape back out. And since this is the back, it's not going to matter if I have some of my tape overhanging. And I'm tripping over a box over here. Okay. We're going to fold that right to the stitch line. Maybe. There we go. And you want to make sure that this fold here stays tucked nicely so it doesn't overhang the top edge. I went a little too far with that. And we'll get some clips, clip that in place. Same thing with this bottom edge. Make sure that that stays tucked under. And if you haven't noticed, the whole reason we're tucking and folding and everything is so that we have a nice, clean, non-frayed edge as we go along. And did you see any of that, or was I too zoomed out? So we have a nice clean edge here as we go along. Okay, we're going to do the same thing on the other side now. And there we are. There is our card pocket. You're going to have 1, 2, 3 card pockets. And now we're going to move on to attaching it to the lining. Okay, we are now at step 14 of the interior assembly. We're going to be attaching the card pocket to the lining. If you have already cut your holes for the grommets, you want those holes to be over here on this right hand side. Like I said, I wait to cut mine, which I'll show you in a few steps. But if you have already cut them, that's just fine, especially if you cut this using a cutting machine. I actually cut this one by hand, so I didn't put the grommet holes in. If you do, have them on the right hand side over here. We're going to lay our card pocket on top of our lining. Because of the location, it's going to be hard to clip. If you can pin it, that would be great. If you have a material that you don't really want to pin to, I put double-sided tape on the back. As long as I can get it to stick. There we go. To help keep the card pocket in place. There we go. We're going to measure up from the bottom edge of the lining, 3/4 of an inch, and you're going to want to center your card pocket bottom edge along the lining, or along your ruler. So the bottom edge is 3/4 of an inch from the bottom of the lining. Did I say that right? I'm sorry, I was getting a little distracted. So you want to make sure that your card pocket bottom edge is 3/4 of an inch away from the bottom edge of the lining. Give it a good press down. Make sure your tape is sticking where you want it to stick. And now we're going to go over to our sewing machine, and we're going to stitch 1/8 of an inch all the way around the card pocket, top, side, bottom, side. And then our interior assembly will be done. We're sewing the card pocket to the lining now. I like to start at this bottom edge. That way, if anything shifts, it's not going to shift the card pocket like sideways. The card pocket should stay pretty straight. Depending on how you want, you can either leave a longer tail and pull your stitching through to the opposite side, or you can back stitch at the beginning and the end. It's just a matter of how you want to do it on this one. It's really not going to be seen, especially if you start at the bottom, because this bottom of this card pocket is not going to be very visible once it's inside the clutch. You know, no, I'm still just going to back stitch. I'm using this brighter thread so you can kind of see my stitching better, but you're not going to see the stitching once it's in the clutch. Okay, we're going to sew 1/8 of an inch all the way around the card pocket. So again, as you're going up this side, you should have, you can see here, this extra room where your stitching should be going in on here. So you're not going through all the layers of the card pocket. So it should be a nice smooth stitch, which is why we left that little extra space. Sorry, I have to tuck my head around here to see where I am. Why we left that little extra space there along the side to help with that stitching and to help with the thickness. So here we go. I told you we were going to stitch along that top. This is why we didn't stitch it when we were stitching the other pockets, so we could have a nice just single line of stitching along that edge. I didn't go far enough. There we go. Just come around to meet where you started. If you started at the corner, then you have already met it. So trim up your threads. And there. Zoom back out. You have your card pocket attached to your lining. Your interior assembly is now done, and we'll be moving on to the final assembly. For the final assembly, we're going to be using our assembled exterior that we did first and our assembled interior that we just finished. And then you're also going to need your zipper tape. I went ahead and put my double-sided tape on my zipper. You're going to want it on the front and the back of the zipper. We're going to work on the exterior first. So you want your grommet cutouts to be on the right-hand side, and you want your zipper pull to be closing to the left, so this direction. And we're going to center our zipper in the zipper box here on the exterior. So your zipper is going to be right side up. It's going to go underneath your assembled exterior, and we're just going to line that up nice and even within the zipper box. I like to just feel where those zipper ends are, and I want them to be about even. They're both hitting about right here in my zipper box. So it's a little, move it that way just a little bit. So it's centered left to right, and then I get the top and bottom centered in the box. I'm going to zoom in a little bit here for you. My fabrics are a little darker, so it's a little harder to see. All right, so give it a good press once you have it centered. Get that tape stuck down. And they're going to flip it over to the back. So go ahead and keep those cutouts there on that right side. Take the backing off of this side of the tape. And we're going to take our assembled interior with the zipper pocket to the bottom and the grommet cutouts here on the right hand side, and we're going to center our zipper box on the interior over the wrong side of the zipper. And as you're doing this, you're also going to want to center your interior lining, which is slightly smaller than your exterior, purposefully. Center that within. So here and here. Make sure it's more important to have your zipper box centered over your zipper. But if you also check around the edges, then get it all pressed down nice and tight. And now we're going to take this over to the sewing machine and we're going to sew around our zipper box, and everything should be lined up nice and neat, and you're going to get both boxes sewn around at the same time. I like to sew from the exterior side because that's the side that's going to be seen. So if there's any unevenness, it's going to be hidden inside. So go over with the exterior side facing up, and we're going to sew around the zipper box. We are on step 4 of the final assembly, and we're going to be sewing around the zipper box of the exterior side. You can put a zipper foot on. I just leave my regular foot on, mostly because I'm lazy. On this one, you will want to leave that long tail instead of back stitching at the beginning and the end. And I stitch about 1/8 of an way away from the edge of the zipper box. Move my threads out of the way as I come back around to the beginning. And meet up to where I started. Leave some long threads. And again, we're going to pull those threads out to the interior side. And I really should have brought my stiletto over here, but I didn't learn from last time to grab that loop. Maybe. Oh my goodness. Okay, there we go. All right, so go ahead and tie those knots off. At this point, if you want to make it look a little nicer, once you tie the knots, you can thread the ends with a needle and thread them through to the opposite side, so pull those knots through to the opposite side of your lining, or you can just clip them short. I would use fray check or burn the edges to keep it a little more secure. And then we will move on to the next step. Now that we have the zipper sewn in place, we have the front and the back. You want to check to make sure you have caught all your edges on the interior side. We're going to move on to our grommet cutouts. If you have already cut these out, then you can go past this part. If you have not cut out the grommet holes in your lining yet, I'm going to show you how to do that now once we have everything put together. Okay, so go ahead and make sure your lining is lying smooth. And what you want to do is you just want to trace where the grommet is going to be onto the wrong side of your lining. Now the grommet does cover your edges, so those are not going to be seen. So if it's, you know, if this moves slightly as you're tracing, you'll be okay. Just make sure it doesn't like get clear crazy. Okay, so you're going to trace both your grommet holes. Go ahead and move one to the side. I like to use my seam ripper here because I can poke it in and just do a nice clean line. If you're uncomfortable with that, just grab a pair of scissors or a like little box cutter, and I just kind of push my seam ripper gently up the straight sides of this grommet hole. You want to make sure you do it nice and slow because you don't want to go zoom and, you know, go crazy. It's kind of like when you're cutting for a like magnetic snap and you need to put the little prong holes in, and you want to make sure sometimes you can just kind of go off crazy. All right, anyway, once you get those initial cuts in, I take a pair of snips and I just finish cutting around the hole. If you go a little larger than where you traced, not by much, but just slightly, these edges are going to be hidden under your grommet. All right. There we are. We have the grommet hole cut out. You can see, ooh, I cut that. All right, and we're going to do the same thing for the other side. We now have both of the grommet holes cut on our lining, and we're moving on to the next step. If you are using a woven material, cotton, I would recommend putting a little bit of fray check around your grommet holes. If you're using something like waterproof canvas, you don't need to worry about that because it's not going to fray. But that will help with a woven material, a woven fabric, to put a little bit of fray check around those edges. All right, this step is not necessary, but one that I find helpful. I take a little bit of fabric glue. I like fabric tack for my fabric glue. And I am going to lift my lining out of the way and put a little bit of glue down along my exterior wrong side. This just helps me know that my lining is in place once I fold everything together. I go around the grommet hole to kind of keep things lined up where they're supposed to be. Like I said, if you do not want to do this step, you do not have to. it just gives me added security as I'm sewing things together to make sure my lining doesn't shift, and then that I don't catch the edge. Because when we're folding this together, we're just folding it together and we're sewing around the edge. So this lining needs to stay in place so that it gets caught in the stitching once you do your final stitch around. So I'm going to do the same thing on the other side now. Make sure my threads are where they're supposed to be. So go around that grommet hole. You don't have to use much. Just kind of put some in there and give it a good press down. The reason I like fabric tack is because it does dry. I forgot to get those edges up there. It does dry pretty quickly, so you're not going to be sitting here for 30 minutes waiting for this glue to dry. If you want it to dry a little faster, you can hit it with a kind of a warm iron. That'll help set it. But the fabric tack dries pretty quickly. And it's not going to, as long as you didn't gloop it on, it's not going to show to the other side. Or, you know, to this, when it dries, it's not going to be, you're not going to be able to see it. Even if you're using a thinner material. Speaking of, if you are using a woven cotton, go ahead and trim up any loose threads that may have happened on your interior here. And just like you went around your grommet cutouts with fray check, I would go around the whole outer edge of the lining with fray check. Now, when we fold it together, your edges are going to be caught up in that seam, and they're not going to be shown, and they're not going to be seen. But if you're worried about fraying, I would just go around the whole outer edge with fray check if you are using a woven material like cotton or canvas or linen. I'm using waterproof canvas, so I'm not going to worry about that. Okay, now that that glue has had just a little bit of time to set, our next step is to fold our clutch in half. So you're going to fold those lining sides together. The first thing I do is I look at my grommet cutouts and I make sure those are where they're supposed to be. Then I come down here to my corners and I line those up. I'm going to zoom in for us here. And I line those up to make sure those, because we're leaving our edges raw, we don't want any weird movement here. Okay. And then I come up here and I make sure that this lining kind of gets pressed up so you don't have some weird lump. And I get a nice edge at the top. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. And make sure that lining gets pressed flat up there. And then everything's nice and lined up. Oop, it buckled on me. I can get that pressed back down again. There we go. Okay, now I'm just going to go around and clip all of my edges and make sure that they're all nice and flush with each other. Actually, I'm going to flip those around so they're all facing the same direction. There we go. So make sure once you start pinning, clipping everything in place, that your corners are still nicely lined up, that your edges aren't turned funny. Okay, so we've clipped all the way around. Our final step is, well, it's actually not our final step, but our next step is to sew around the clutch. We're going to start at the top corner, one of the top corners, depending on how you want to put it on your machine. Start at the top corner. I usually go just like 1/16 of an inch from where it's folded and start there. You're going to sew all the way around, and you're going to come and end here. Don't go across the zipper, only corner to corner. Sew 1/8 of an inch, which should catch your interior. If you're worried about it catching your interior, you can go like, I guess it'd be what, 3/16 of an inch. So you can go just a little bit bigger than 1/8 of an inch if you want to make sure you catch that interior in your seam. Or you can do a double stitch. You can do 1/8 of an inch, and then you can come back and do a second line of stitching just to the inside of your first line of stitching. You can go as far as 1/4. I wouldn't go too much further than that, or you're going to hit your grommets cutouts. But if you're worried about catching that inside, you can do a double row of stitching. So let's head over to the machine. For reference, we are now on step 8 of the final assembly section. We're going to be sewing around the edge of our clutch. I go ahead and do a back stitch here. Just to make sure everything is where it's supposed to be, and I can't see where my edge is here. Hold on just a second. Sorry, you're going to be getting a lot of my arm in here. All right, there we go. I couldn't see where my foot was, so I'm sitting too far back from my machine. Okay, so, and I've got that off track. Let's try it again. Okay, now we're good. Okay, so let's go ahead and just sew around. We're going to start at one top corner, we're going to end at the other. Okay. Let's trim our threads. I'll probably get my lighter and burn these ends just to keep them looking a little nicer. And smooth that out of the way. Zoom out a little. There you have it. Around the edge. Next we're going to put our grommet in. The final step of our final assembly is to add our oblong grommet here to our clutch. I'm going to keep the cutouts on the right hand side. And you want to take the front piece just press it in. If you have used a cutting machine of any sort, whether it's Cricut, Silhouette, or a laser cutter, this should fit very nicely in there. If you were hand cutting, you might have a little bit of trimming you need to do, but the template does have the correct size cut out, so it should work nicely for you. All right, then we're just going to place the back on there, grab our screws, a little bit of super glue can be used, oh my goodness, to set these screws in if you're worried about them coming out. I'm not going to do that at the moment. I might go back later and get that put in. But for the moment, we'll just stick with tightening those in nicely. What am I hitting? Oh, there we go. Okay. So there we have it. There is our grommet, our clutch, and now we'll get the handle put on. Oh, and I should say that if you want to edge paint the sides of your clutch, do that now. That way it can be beginning to dry, because you'll have to do multiple coats, I'm sure. But if you want to edge paint that, you want to do that before you start putting the strap on. We are now on the strap assembly section. So you're going to need your strap. I have already drawn a line down the center, and I have put these marks here about 3 inches from the ends, so I know where to start and stop my sewing. So we're just going to fold our edges into the line and clip them in place. I know some of you use double-sided tape and fold your edges over and don't worry about clips. My double-sided tape just isn't reliable enough to hold my edges in place. So I do it the clippy way. But however you like to get your edges folded in. If you like to use tape, use tape. If you like to use clips, do that. Either way, you want to make sure you have some sort of marker to know where you want to stop. Because we are going to sew a 1/4 of an inch from our folded edge. We're going to sew down each side, but we're going to start about 3 inches from the end, and we're going to stop about 3 inches from the end. I use the clip method, so I just clip one side at a time. So I am actually going to sew this off camera, because I feel like most of you know how to make a strap. That'll make it go just slightly faster for you guys when you're watching this tutorial. So we're going to sew a 1/4 of an inch, so 1/4 of an inch, because we want it here toward the middle. Start 3 inches from one end, stop 3 inches from the other, because we need to leave these open to sew together once we've attached it to the clutch. All right, I'll be back. Okay, so we have our strap stitched together, both sides. We left this opening or unstitched at each end about 3 inches. And now we're going to flip it over to the right side. So flip it over to the right side. All right. To be completely transparent with you guys, the reason I sewed this off camera is because I wanted to be able to see what I was doing a little bit better. I'm using this contrasting stitching, and when I have the camera on my sewing machine, I have to sit further back, and it's hard for me to see my stitches. So, totally, you know, for my own benefit there. Okay, anyway, we are now on step 6 of the strap assembly. You're going to get your assembled clutch here, and you're going to have your grommet over here on the right hand side. You want your strap to be facing right side up, and you're going to go under the clutch to thread your strap through from the back side, and you're just going to pull it through. Okay, so we went from the back side of the clutch with the grommet on the right hand side, and we have the strap right side up. Now you're going to take this left hand side and you're going to fold it over. So now that this piece here, this bottom piece, is wrong side up, and the top piece is still right side up. Okay, so you see that? I'm going to zoom in just a little bit so you can see what I'm doing next a little bit easier. All right, so we have this, that's a little too much. We have this top side right side up. Ooh, wrong direction. Let's try that again. We have the top side here, top part of the strap, right side up. We have the bottom part of the strap, wrong side up. You're going to take this and you're just going to turn it, rotate it 90 degrees counterclockwise, and you're going to place it on top of your strap at a 90-degree angle. So these pieces are going to be perpendicular to each other. Line up those top corners. I get a clip and I clip it. Now I've already put the line on here for ease, but you want to get your ruler, or you can eyeball it if you're really good at that, and you want to draw a line from the top left corner of this bottom strap down to where it meets the other strap at its bottom right hand corner. Does that make sense? So draw this 45-degree line, and that is the line you are going to stitch on to connect these straps. So you want to make sure, let me zoom back out again, that's in. You want to make sure that your strap isn't twisted. Okay, you want this first strap here coming out from the clutch that goes underneath it to be right side out or right side up. You want this bottom one just to be folded over to the wrong side and just turned at a 90-degree angle so it sits on top of the other one. All right, now let's go over to the machine. We're just going to sew a line straight down to attach the clutch. I'm sorry, to attach the strap. We are now on step 8 of the strap assembly. And we're going to be sewing on this diagonal line to attach our strap to make it into one piece. Before you move on to the next step to cut off this extra bit, I want you to double check that, see my light ring there? I want you to double check that your strap is not twisted. So pull it tight and make sure that is nice and flat before you do any trimming or cutting. Okay, so mine's good. Yep. So we're going to come back up here and we're going to trim off this triangle here. And we're going to leave about a 1/4 inch or so of a seam allowance. Now we're going to open that up, press it nice and flat. And we're going to now fold our strap in. Your strap should be on the wrong side now. Fold the edges of your strap into the middle. And you're going to finish sewing your strap. Sewing at a diagonal here allows for a little less bulk in this strap. It's still going to be a little bulky right here, just because, you know, we're using a thicker fabric. There's going to be a couple layers. But the diagonal will help keep it a little less bulky. And personally, I think it looks prettier, but that might just be me. All right, so now you have this attached to your clutch. So you're gonna have to play a little bit and move your clutch around. So go ahead and find where you stopped your stitching when you made your strap. And you're gonna start there. And you're just gonna continue that 1/4 inch seam. I'm gonna put that back in place. 1/4 inch seam for the rest of your strap. And I hope this one looks as nice as the first part of it. Since I can't see what I'm doing. All right, so mine was getting a little tight there, so let me loosen it up there. And then once you get to your stitch line from your previous, back stitch, and there we go. You're going to do the same thing on the other side. Okay, we're going to trim up our threads. Oh no, I got a little crazy on that side. Okay. And trim up our threads. And I'm going to move us back over to the away from the sewing machine so you can see a little better what we're going to do. And we are almost finished. 2 more steps, guys. Here we go. Our strap is now attached to our clutch. We're going to flip it so that the right side is facing out. And where your seam is from where you had attached it together. You can see I got a little tangled right there, so it doesn't look as pretty. Anyway, you want to put that seam down where your clutch is. If you want, we're going to tie a knot in the clutch, so this should be hidden, hopefully. If you want to try to tie your seam into the knot, you're welcome to. I just kind of tuck it in to where it meets inside the grommet. When I tried to tie the knot within, or the seam within the knot was really bulky and didn't really sit prettily. So I've just been tucking it down here into the grommet, and you don't really see it. Okay, so here's going to tie a knot. Okay, simple, nothing fancy about it. And you want it to be fairly close to your clutch. Just like that. That's it. You can play with it a little bit if you want it to look a little different or angled or anything like that. But that's it. And happily, my crazy seam mostly got tied into the knot, so you don't see it. So, there we go, guys. You finished the Courtney clutch. I hope you love it. I hope you enjoy making it. I hope you enjoy using it. I hope if you are a maker and you sell them, that your clients love them. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. All my information will be in the description. And happy sewing, guys.